In the factors in play in the selection of the material, we have got those materials which you are going to use it in equipment which is used for the manufacture of pharmaceuticals, bulk drugs, antibiotics, and biological products. It is covering both formulations and bulk drugs and your vaccines and sera and biological products with your enzymes, so which is involving the growth of the microorganisms. Okay, so these factors which are going to be present in all those sectors which we are going to be involved. So in addition, there is are essential to be some material, and wide variety of the material can be utilized for the construction of the equipment, including your rubber, plastic, metal, everything. Because even in the metallic one, you may be using a rubber gasket. Even in the metallic and rubber gasket in the equipment, what you are using, maybe you are putting a plastic cover as a packaging or a barrier effect. So these are all the things which we are going to deal in this. So most of the times the plant material construction, which is depending upon three factors. One is chemical factor, physical factor, and economic factors. So we need to consider these three factors. And if you have been asked the question 2 marks, list the factors what I am going to discuss now, and along with the sub factors. If it is a 5 marks question, list them and write a little bit. If it is a 10 marks question, list them and write each factor in detail. This is actually the way you need to answer this question. So first is chemical factor, next is physical factor, another is economical factor. The three major categories. There are some sub factors which are present. They include chemical resistance, structure strength, chemical resistance, structure strength, resistance to physical shock and resistance to thermal shock, ease of fabrication, cost, and maintenance. So in this particular case, the sub factors include chemical resistance. So how much is that particular equipment is prone to get corroded? How much is the impact which is caused by the product to that particular equipment? So this is depending upon the not having a chemical resistance. It is, if it is highly active, that metal, you are going to make that equipment is contaminating your product, and product is going to damage your equipment. It means we need to have both prevented. So some of the another factors which are including structure strength, resistance to the physical shock, resistance to thermal shock, ease of fabrication, of course the cost which is including the economic factor, and maintenance is actually another very important consideration we need to see, because we need to reuse our equipment every time by washing it and maintaining it. First we will be seeing chemical factors. The chemical factors that will affect our corrosion. So that content should not alter the properties of material. The content, whatever we are using in the reaction mixture, like maybe HCl or sodium hydroxide, or it may be a methanol or ethanol or any corrosive chemical. So that should not alter the chemical properties, that is physical or chemical properties of the equipment material. This is actually one way we are going to prevent it by selecting that material. So the contents, whatever which prevent, may react, and thus they get contaminated with the material of the plant. The drugs and chemicals may be destroying the material. In the dual courses, we need to consider the chemical factors. One is our product we are manufacturing there should not damage the equipment, and equipment should not damage your product by creating a contamination. Say for example, if you are using very active metal in the corrosion prone material in the reaction mixture or your size reduction, the material of construction like iron enter as a degradation product into your formulation or a product. Similarly, if you are using a corrosion prone solvents, and it will damage the equipment, in both the mutually they get degraded and makes the product worthless. So this chemical factor we need to consider these two dual effect. What equipment is caused a damage to your product, what product is going to damage to equipment, we need to see. So the product may be contaminated by the material of equipment, lead to the instability, decomposition, and physiological effects. It may also affect the some of the properties of our chemicals, and it may changes our appearance and the color. We've already discussed in the case of dies and punches. So the presence of the traces of heavy metal decompose some of the products in a drastic manner by acting as a catalytic reactions. And most of the time, if you see, the stability of the vitamins are decreased in the presence of the metallic ions. So most of the times we are having a scavenging agents or EDTA like Medital, they act as a chelating agents. They enhance the stability of those products, because sometimes we may not be avoiding and restricting it. This is the one we need to consider. The solution that come into contact with equipment are generally corrosive in nature. So in addition, equipment are exposed to the extremes of pH and temperature and pressure. Because of that, the material get corroded and losing its strength and durability. So the life of equipment is reduced. We need to purchase a new equipment. It involves capital expenditure. Again, it is going to be a problem. So we need to avoid it. So materials of plant construction consists of greatly in providing a plant that will be resistant to the attack of acids like oxidizing agents, etc. Another one is physical factors. The physical factors like strength, wear properties, sterilization, cleaning, mass, thermal conductivity, thermal expansion, ease of fabrication, and transparency. So these are all the factors which we need to consider, and we will see one by one. The first parameter we need to consider is the strength. So how much the material what we are using for the equipment, it can withstand the shocks which I am going to provide during the manufacture, we need to consider. Most of the times if you see, the glass we frequently use in the lab cannot be used in pharmaceutical industry in the bigger equipment because of less strength, because it is fragile in nature. So because it is maybe hard, it may be inactive to so many reactive mixtures. You can keep concentrated acids and bases also, but it is breakable. So in the compression of tablets, the dies and punches should have the sufficient mechanical strength to transmit the applied force. And we are going to the high punch forces where we want to lead the tablet, because thousands of particles converted into a single bigger tablet. Otherwise, what will happen? The tablets will be poorly formed and it will become powdered during the travel itself. Glass satisfies the property of the strength, but it is breakable, what we have already seen. And aerosol containers must withstand the pressure, because we are putting some agent that will be acting as a propellant. That propellant is kept under the pressure by the pressure fill and cold fill techniques. We are going to learn in the 5th sem those techniques, but there we are employing 1.2 megapascals. It should be able to withstand at 55 degrees centigrade or 960 kPa. This is actually a prime requirement for the aerosol diazepam. Otherwise, it will act as a bomb and it will explode during the travel, and you are in the pharmacy stores or it in the home. So this is actually, the strength is very much important in our packaging material, in our equipment, in our containers, or any utensils or accessories used for the transportation. Whether it is a pipe or it may be a valve, everything, it should withstand our conditions of the flow and the conditions of our materials. Tin plate containers can satisfy this particular condition when compared to your glass. Glass may also fulfill, but the problem is fragility. If anybody is mistakenly allowing to fall, then what will happen? It will tend to break immediately, makes the damage. So while plastic containers also having enough strength, but it cannot be used due to the poor mechanical strength. They will be having a expansion and they will be getting burst. So this is very important parameter. It restricts sometimes only to use metallic material to give enough strength. Wear properties. Wear properties means just we have seen in the size reduction equipment, our equipment parts are getting moved continuously to and fro or rotational manner. In the to and fro manner or rotations, these properties become very important when there is a possibility of the friction between the moving parts. These properties are become very important when there is a possibility of the friction between the moving parts. Example, During milling and grinding, the grinding surface wear off and this material will be incorporated into powder as a impurities. In the milling, what will happen? We are having a moving parts, so the surface is going to get an impact and friction. This material will be incorporated as impurity in our powders. So in those cases, we need to either employ some protective measures, or if this impurity is going to have in the limits which is lesser than the permeable limits, then there is no problem. Otherwise, we need to change the material of construction. So such type of the mills should be avoided most of the times when the drugs is having highest purity are required. Most of the times this requirement will be specified in the pharmacopoeia. We need to see that specification and follow these norms and select a proper material and use it. The risk of contamination is more due to the wear of ceramic and iron equipment. Not only that, we are going to use in end runner mill and edge runner mill, we are going to use stoneware. In that, you are going to have a silicon particles and the powder is going to enter into our product. If it is a oral dosage form, no issue. If it is a herbal drug or it may be an extract, we can compromise because we have got some limits for that if it is getting met. Otherwise, we should not use that stoneware in our particular process. This is very much we need to take into the consideration wear properties. Of course, in the maintenance and we require a smooth surface, but at the same time for sterilization, if you want to use our product to the parenterals for injections, we need to consider this factor. As this material is having a proper sterilizable or not, can it withstand the temperature or not, we need to consider. So in the production of parenteral products, antibiotics and biological and sterilization is very essential step, which is obtained by the autoclaving at higher temperatures and pressures. Equipment and vessels are made up of SS because they can be sterilized easily when compared to remining. Because we cannot employ a rubber or a plastic. Most of the times the plastic, it will be getting melted and deformed at the temperature of 121 degrees of autoclaving. So we need to prefer only SS in the sterilization where we are using autoclave. So this limitation is very much important in the selecting a material whenever we are using in our pharmacy. Another important parameter we need to consider is cleaning. Generally, a disposable ware is a concept now to prevent the cross contamination, but it makes the product very costly. Reason is we are using once and throwing it, and it is adding a burden to the environment also. So for that purpose, what you do, we use a equipment or a vessel or a accessory which can be cleaned, so that the same equipment or material or part can be used repeatedly. So in those cases, we need to select a material which is having very smooth finish, or it is having a polished surface. For that purpose, we have got a mechanical rubbing of our SS, and we have got so many electro plating, or we are having a electro polishing. So make the too much smooth. It will be appearing like a mirror. So if you see, so such smooth finish and polished surfaces, the process of cleaning very easy. So this can be possible with SS, that is stainless steel and glass, and they are very good. You can approach very smooth surfaces and easily cleanable surfaces. If the surface is having rough in nature and crevatures, or it is having imperfections and up and downs, your material is getting entrapped in that and making a cleaning very problematic. Not only problematic, your detergent may be entrapped in that, it causes the further contamination. Mass is another very much important parameter. It should be having a light weight so that it will not add any much cost to the freight. In the packaging material, mass is very much important. If you want to lift or use one equipment from one lab to another, one place to another place, mass is very much important parameter. Many times, the equipment should be transported or moved from one place to another. This is possible when the material is light in weight and when other factors are satisfactory. So many times the equipment should be transported. Say for example, you have got a filter leaf, you have got some flame and plate filter press. So these are all the taken one place to another place depending upon the need, and we are applying it. And after this is over, we are washing and we are taking to another place. So that's required to be lightweight when other factors which is having is satisfactory. Preferably, we need to use a lightweight so that we will be making it this easy. Another parameter we need to consider is thermal conductivity. So of course we know that the thermal conductivity which makes the heat transfer very well, we will be using in our heat transfer like heat exchangers and interchangers. You've already seen counter current flow and parallel flow. In those cases, we are using overall heat transfer coefficient is very high. If you are finding OHTC more in particular metal when compared to remaining metals, it is better to use that one only. The quantity of the heat transferred is more in particular metal. We have already seen Stefan Boltzmann law constant in our practical. You have seen that different materials, how they are behaving and what is the radiation constant effect based on the materials we have seen as extension of learning. So you can select those materials which is having high thermal conductivity so that we will be having a better heat transfer in our equipment like evaporators, dryers, and evaporating stills, heat exchangers. So they are the having a good conductivity is better. If you want to allow not to dissipate the heat, it is insulators are better. So we can have the option to select these two depending upon our purpose. Thermal expansion. This is property is very much critical. So when you are having a glass, when you are using in a laboratory, where you are taking a reaction in the chemistry or what, so you are exposing the round bottom flask to the higher temperatures. Suddenly one droplet of water is falling, which is cool in nature, onto that particular glass, which is already hot. What will happen? You will get explosion. It will tend to get a break. The reason is the glass is having a expansion in the place where it has got hot in nature, but suddenly if you are allowing any water droplet which is cool in nature is falling onto the surface, in that place your material is getting contracted. It is a single continuous round bottom flask and somewhere portion is having a contraction, another one is expansion, it will tend to break. This is very much important to our pharmaceutical industry because we have already seen stress induced corrosion. This will happen, and cavitation, this may happen in the case of thermal expansion is the phenomena if we don't look into it. If the material has a high coefficient of expansion, the design of the plant may be greatly complicated because even our temperature variations are present in the day and night. We have got wide variations in our temperatures in the winter and summer. So the coefficient of expansion, if it is varying, then we will be having damaging effects if we are not taking this factor into consideration. We know that derailing of so many things which you don't give the gaps in the tracks because of the thermal expansion. You know that phenomena in the intermediate, you might have already studied as an example. This increases should be able to maintain the size and the shape of the equipment at working temperatures without any odd conditions or odd shapes or expansions. So then we can use it, otherwise we need to select another material or alloy. The material should be able to maintain size and shape of the equipment and working temperature without any damage. So the another parameter is ease of fabrication. Sometimes we need to take a curves, we need to take a grooves. Sometimes it is required to put a hooks. So this is actually malleability, like a pipes which you want to expand as a sheets, ductility which you want to take these considerations. So during the fabrication, can I be making it to any shape? So if you see here in the ornamental metals like gold and platinum, you can take to any shapes. And the ease of the fabrication, either it is melting and putting into a cast, or you can take it and apply the removal of the unwanted portion. Anywhere you can do it, and fabrication is very easy to take into the different shapes. But sometimes the fabrication may not be possible in some cases with smooth finish. So the material undergoes various process of casting, welding, and forging. In those cases, such material cannot be used if it is not suitable. Transparency is a very much important and last parameter in our selection. Why I am telling it is a last? It is possible only in the case of glass and some cases like plastic. So they will be considered. So economic factors, of course, it is required to be cheap. So this one we have already